Hola, amigo, amigas, players, playerettes, dudettes, everybody in between. Welcome. This is episode 105 of Game of Crimes. You know what that means, Murph?
Well, I got it as 106.
Nah, 105.
You didn't really?
Well, no, you're right. 106. You know why?
You heard that, ladies and gentlemen. He said I was right.
No, I said you were correct. I'm sorry. Mr. William Rodriguez Abadia was 105. We are into 106, which basically means, hey, look, we are into the second half of our 4-year plan. So we have started the year 3.
There you go.
All right. So, hey, guys, everybody, welcome. Hey, we're gonna get into some good stuff again. And seriously, 2 years on, 105 episodes going on 106, which is what I said originally. Murph just got it wrong. You guys know I'm right. Anyway, but hey, look, we want to get into this. But hey, first, let's just get some of the housekeeping out of the way real quick. Head on over to Apple, Spotify, hit those 5 stars. It helps us out a lot. People look for us. They find us that way. Your reviews help us get to the top and help people find this thing of ours. We call it Game of Crimes. Also, head on over to our website, gameofcrimespodcast.com, for everything, including the book, Son of the Cali Cartel, which we had from William Rodriguez Abadia. So we've got a lot of good books out there, a lot of good stuff there. Follow us on that thing they call social media, at Game of Crimes on Twitter, Game of Crimes Podcast on Facebook, and the Instagram. But where you got to be is patreon.com/Game of Crimes. We have got one of our funnest things to do, Murph, coming up, Q&A. Yep. So that will be coming up in a few days. We just did 911. The one I did with you on 911, that was a little bit different. I mean, everybody thought it was one thing, then it was another. We don't want to give it away, because if you want to listen to it, where you got to go, patreon.com/Game of Crimes, and hear what we said about 911.
Absolutely. 199. What's your emergency? Come on over.
Well, the emergency is you can't call 911, so your house just burned down. But that was the other thing too. But that was interesting though, because even with you, it was kind of like it had a twist at the end. I know a lot of folks didn't see coming. So, but just got on over there, because we just finished the review of season 2 of Narcos.
Yep.
And we actually had people on Patreon ask, hey, can you do a review of season 3, with Chris and Dave? So that's something under consideration right now. We'll get them back on. And one episode, basically, we'll cover season 3 of Narcos. But, we've got our monthly Q&A, the Narco Meter, you can't make this shit up. So, guys, we got a ton of good stuff. But the only way you're going to find it is to go to patreon.com/Game of Crimes. Now, let's get into this one, Murph. But before we do, I got to tell you about, though, another little thing we have, the Velvet Glove. Cool. Sandy Salvato.
Yeah.
Our favorite mafia queen. Game of Crimes fans. Just head on over to go to Facebook, type in Game of Crimes fans. Answer a couple questions. They're easy. If you can't answer these questions, come on. Look, you'll be given admittance into the inner sanctum of where hilarity, jocularity, joviality ensues.
There's some good stuff on there. And there's also some serious stuff. And this is what I like about the fan club, is when people are going through a little bit of a tough time, if they post on there, it's amazing how many people come in to support them. So it's actually gotten to be, even though you haven't met these people in person, we've gotten to be like a little enclosed family. So come over and check us out. It's a lot of fun. You'll see a lot of funny things on there you won't see anywhere else. I'll tell you that. And
there are some people in serious need of mental health help. So, and by the way,
might be the qualification to come in there.
It is. And one of the stories we have coming up came from our fan group. So on Small Town Police Blotter, which we'll talk about here in a second. So speaking of that, Murph, this is a show about crime. We talk about bad people doing bad things and bad people doing bad things to good people. We take the story seriously, but
you guys know us. We never take ourselves serious. We're going to have some fun on here.
And what's one of the ways we have fun?
Well, we have this little thing that we like to call Small Town Police Blotter.
Drum roll. And by the way, I told you, one of our stories came from Game of Crimes fans, and it comes from A.G. Harris IV. Okay. He is 4th in the line. There's the 3rd, the 2nd, and the 1st. So apparently, there's the father, the senior, the junior, the 3rd, the 4th. So this is A.G. Harris IV. So Steve, got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
This comes to us from Plymouth, Indiana, population 10,214.
Salute.
Now, Steve, you've been to job interviews, right? You interviewed for your job in, Krusty Krab, West Virginia, for the railroad, for DEA, right? You've shown up to those.
I did.
Law enforcement things, right? It's very important to make a good impression when you show up for that interview, right?
Yes, sir.
So if you were showing up to the sheriff's office and interviewing, what's one of the things you might not want to do?
You probably want to leave your meth or your coke or your heroin or your weed at home.
That would be the illegal stuff. What legally that you're entitled to do would you probably not want to do before an interview?
Come in drunk? I swear. Is that what happened? Holy cow.
So, this young lady came into an interview at the Marshall County Sheriff's Office in Plymouth, Indiana. During her interview with Captain Jeff Snyder, he detected an odor of an alcoholic beverage upon her breath. So it quickly went from an interview to an interrogation. And it wasn't long before this lady, her name is Snea Decky, I think that's it, is that she admitted, well, she'd had a little bit to drink that morning. You got to remember, this is like 10 o'clock in the morning. She also told the captain, well, I also drove to the interview. So,
okay.
What did they do?
DUI.
They did field tests, and they gave her a certified breath test. I don't know, but it's a certified operator. So, Steve, the legal limit is 0.08 in almost every state. It's 0.08. If you're at 0.08, you are presumed to be under the influence. You don't have to prove anything.
Yep.
10 o'clock in the morning, Steve, she was 0.158.
Yo, baby, you go. She hasn't even been home yet to do the walk of shame. You know what I mean? She's been out all night.
Oh, my God, come on.
Reminds me of that song, Wasn't That a Party? Or the song Day Drinking. She's just getting the jump on everything. And I guess she was nervous for the interview. I mean, cut her some slack.
Got a couple drinks to, a couple belts, just to calm your nerves down, and get on with it. Yeah.
Just to take off the edge so I can answer your question.
I came in drunk to show you that I can understand drunk people, which, by the way, a lot of guys and ladies in law enforcement deal with drunk people on a regular basis. That is probably not the best way to do it. So, Steve, but you know what another losing battle was?
What was
this comes to us from Sarnia, which is in Huron County in the Ontario province of Canada.
All right.
So the Ontario Provincial Police made an arrest last week. Again, they found a guy trying to fight while he was drunk.
Mm-hmm.
So big deal, right? What makes this so
unusual?
Unusual, right?
Right.
Well, he was trying to fight a tree.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to put my money on the tree because I think you're going to lose that one.
He goes, you read that correctly, OPP said on Twitter. The man received a public intoxication ticket, was held overnight. OPP once again reminded the public to drink responsibly.
And leave the trees alone.
Leave the trees alone. I've got to tell you, we had a quick story, but we had a guy, we used to call him Fast Freddy because he was very fast on his feet. And he would run from you all the time. And one time he was laughing at the guys he was running, and then he turned around, he ran right into a tree, and I was the supervisor on duty. I had to come over and take a use of force picture. The dude's got bark in his forehead from where he hit the tree. Anyway, then Freddy went to prison. He gained, instead of becoming buff, he gained a lot of weight. He came out, we call him Fat Freddy, and he couldn't run after that. All right.
That's appropriate.
All right, Steve, what year? We're going to do another episode of What Year Was It? Are you ready?
I'm ready.
This is, and I will tell you where it's at. This is in London.
Okay.
The title of the article is Strange Arrests of Nuns in Manchester.
Oh, no, Manchester's a tough town, buddy. I'm telling you.
A singular case came before the Manchester County magistrates at their court on Saturday. The justice on the bench being Mr. T. Dickens, Mr. Henry Lee, and Mr. J. F. Mart. Two Sisters of Mercy belonging to Manchester, where the order they belong, the Little Sisters of Mercy, maintained two large charitable institutions. So what happened was they were brought up in custody and charged with having been guilty of an offense under the Vagrant Act by soliciting alms at Singlewood Lodge, Prestwick, the residence of Mr. W. Rayner Wood, a county magistrate. So they were attired as nuns, defended by Mr. Addison, barrister at law. This is in court. So as they were asking him, the prisoners were placed in the front of the dock, and prisoners were given into custody for an offense under the Vagrant Act. Mr. Addison, is it that you all have to say, Mr. Woods, yes, but I shall be willing to answer any questions? So what did they ask him? Now, did you know by their habit that these ladies were members of a religious community? I did not. Will you swear as a sensible man that you did not know they were dressed as they are now? They were dressed as they are now. And do you mean to say before this bench that you did not know that they were members of a religious community? Well, I thought they might be, but I did not know how they were. So people dressed as nuns, soliciting alms for the poor, you don't know they're nuns. So they charged them with vagrancy, Murph.
Well, the key word in there was a sensible man. Sensible.
Now, here, I'll give you the ending of the story, then we'll ask you what year was it. So, we have now one duty to perform, and I hasten to do it by at once dismissing the case. This is one of the magistrates. I also wish to say that as far as my own feeling is concerned, that those ladies were exercising the highest quality of our nature, that is asking for charity for those who required it. The case was then dismissed, and the ladies left the court. It is said an action will be entered for illegal arrest.
Ooh.
So Steve.
Mr. Sensible is going to get charged now.
Steve, What year was it? This occurred on October 12th. Was it 1878? 1888 or 1898?
Well, first of all, October 12th is the best day of the year because it happens to be my birthday.
One day after mine. I know. You're always late to the party, Murph. You came in second. I came in first.
There you go.
1878, 1888, or 1898?
Oh, Lord, I have no clue. Let's just go with the one in the middle. 1888.
October 12th, 1878, in the Illustrated Police News out of London, Greater London, England.
So I wondered if Mr. Sensible lost his job after that.
He probably did.
He's now Mr. Clueless.
He's Mr. Clueless. He's
wait. He can move to Florida.
Yeah.
Come on down.
Become Florida man. Yes. We have, trust me, there are openings on a regular basis in Florida to be Florida man.
Oh, my gosh. I swear there's so many people moving here, and we were guilty of it too, but it's thousands of people move here every day.
But Murph, the difference between you and some of these other folks is you're not out running around, well, at least that I'm aware of, naked, chasing ducks, or fighting with trees and making the news. So
that is true. You are absolutely correct on that. I do not
It's true that I don't know about it, or it's true that you're not doing it.
That I'm not doing it.
Okay.
Well, and that you don't know about it. Well, you don't know what I'm doing.
Well, I do know what we're doing right now, and that's to introduce our next guest, which, by the way, you thought it was Tony Placido, and we got correction. It's Tony Placido, because he is Italiano. Tony Placido.
Well, we call him Tony Placido.
Placebo. Tony Placebo.
No, Placido.
Placido.
Or when I was still on the job, I called him boss.
Yeah.
I tell you what, it was this guy I have the utmost respect for. He's a retired DEA special agent who, started down in the low ranks, worked his way all the way up to where he eventually became the head of intelligence for DEA. For some reason...
Wait a minute. Isn't that an oxymoron?
Well, I'm getting to that part. For some reason, I was selected to go from operations to intelligence when I got my promoted to senior executive service. And Tony became my boss. And I got to tell you, this is the kind of guy he is. The 12th floor in DEA headquarters, there's these two 12th floor buildings. And in one of the buildings, that's where the administrator and the deputy administrator sat, and her executive staff sit up there. And so my first day up there, I come up on the 12th floor, and it's kind of hallowed ground up there. I start to say hollow ground. Hallowed ground.
Might be hollow in between the years. Who knows?
There are times when it is hollow. But I came walking down the hallway, and Tony saw me coming. He goes, "Murph!" And Tony is a big man, and he came over and grabbed me and picked me up off my feet, gave me the biggest bear hug. And, that's just not appropriate on the 12th floor. I mean, so that's the kind of guy he is. I mean, you love this guy. I went to him one time, and I had taken over this classified intelligence center. And we were doing some different things that required me to travel quite a bit. And so every time I'd have a trip, I'd drive up to headquarters and, "Hey, Tony, I need to go here. I need to go there." And finally, after about the 6th or 8th time, he's like, "Murph, sit down a minute. I got a question for you." He said, "Who's in charge of the office where you work?" And I said, "Well, I am. I'm the director out there." And he said, "That's right." He said, "So if you need to travel, go travel. You go do your business. You don't have to come and get my permission." And seeing, in law enforcement, you always got to go to the next ranking person. But that's the kind of guy he was. He let you do your job. And
that was a mistake trusting you.
Well, hey, I told him right then, I said, there has absolutely been a mistake made with this promotion because intelligence and Murphy don't go in the same sentence together.
Well, but there's only one way we're going to find out if they don't go in that same sentence together, and that's to find out what Tony has to say about some of the stuff he has. So I have to ask you, Murphs, are you ready to play the biggest, baddest, most dangerous game of all, the oxymoron intelligence-led game of crimes?
Absolutely, everybody. So get in, sit down, shut up, and hold on. I think you're going to love hearing from Mr. Tony Placido.
Placido. Hola, 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 amigos, players, playerettes, dudettes. We have another interesting guest. And here's the challenge with bringing interesting guests on. They want to tell us all the interesting stuff in the pre-call. We say, that's why we got a podcast. Save it for the podcast. And Murph, I blame you for this. You don't properly prepare our guests anymore. You're fired. I'm going to cut your pay in half.
This man that we have on the show today had the authority to fire me at one point. You don't. So, you were talking about if we need a break, give you the sign. You know my sign to you.
Yeah. That's number of real true friends left.
That's a good Monday morning sign for you.
Well,
now this is
go ahead.
This is the guy we got on today. Is one of the most highly thought of DE agents I've ever met in my life. He's a legend within the agency. He won't admit to this. He's humble as he can be. He'll probably deny all this crap I'm getting ready to say about him. Everybody always looked up to Tony Placido. We called him friend, but mostly we called him boss. And the cool thing about when he was the boss, he didn't ram it down your throat. I remember, I got to tell this quick story, Tony. I came in, I'm running the Office of Special Intel at the time, and everything's classified there. And I'd come in and I'd say, Tony, now I need to make a trip here.
Hold on, Murph. First of all, your story doesn't hold water. You were just saying you and Intel in the same sentence. Bullshit.
Well, that's right. That's the first thing. I told Tony the first day I saw him up there, I'm like, boss, the words Murphy and Intel don't go together. I think there's been a major screw up here. But I'm going to Tony and I'm saying I need travel here, I need travel there, and this went on for about a month and a half or 2 months, and finally he said, "Sit down for a minute." I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "What's your position?" I said, "I'm the director of the Office of Special Intelligence." And he said, "That's right. You're an SES. If you need to travel, you tell me how your trip was when you get back. You don't need permission. You're an executive now." And I'm like, "Dude, I'm gonna go around the world." No, but I mean, that's the kind of guy I was. You love working for this guy. And I'm not blowing smoke on you, Tony. I'm just saying it's an honor, a true honor for us to have you here on Game of Crime. So thank you, brother, for coming on.
Well, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
See, he doesn't even brag on it. It's just, okay, thanks.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what he says when the interview's over.
He's like, Murph, what the hell did you get me into?
What'd you get me into? Jeez. And sorry, guys, too. Man, I'm still fighting. This is Murph, I'm still fighting this over a week later after the game conference, man. It's like,
you need to get into some warm weather there, brother, and get that crap.
I know. Well, I will be. I'm headed out to San Francisco this week. But anyway, let's get back to our guest of honor, Tony. All Tony. Right. So, as we do with everybody, thing of ours, Cosa Nostra. How did you get started in this thing of ours we called law enforcement? I mean, were you just like slinging dope on a corner one time and you said, "Look, this is too dangerous. I got to get on the other side"? I mean, what was the deal, man?
Well, much to the chagrin of my daughters and some other people, I think I came out of the womb like ready to go into a career in law enforcement. I've always aspired to a career in law enforcement, I guess. And
well, coming out of the womb, you were already strip searched. You're ready to go.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Clean slate. But I did my undergraduate degree in Boston at this university called Northeastern University, and it's a 5-year cooperative education program. So you get no summers off, and it takes 5 years to do a 4-year degree. But I'm alternating 18 months, 6 months at a time of school and 6 months at a time, as it turns out, working for the DEA a few times through. And
how did you settle on DEA?
Well, I actually, the first job that I took was with the U.S. Customs Service because it was available. I had always thought that I wanted to do the DEA work. This is, 1977, so it's, Miami Vice is sort of just,
yeah, baby,
in the offing, and it's very interesting. And so DEA had a vacancy the next year, and they didn't want to give me the job because I already had a federal position. And I kind of fought the system, and I'm glad I did, because they sent me my very first year with DEA in the internship. They sent me to training as an intel research specialist. And then the second year, they sent me down to Miami. This is the year of the Mariel boat lifts, 1980. And I'm down there working on a bunch of drug-related homicides as a 20-year-old, and this was the coolest job in the world. So I'm working with 2 detectives from Metro-Dade homicide and a bunch of DEA agents. And as Raul Diaz, the detective, tells me, he says, "Hey, kid, most homicide cases are, they're a case of whodunit. These cases, who is it? We don't even know who this guy is. You've got no ID on him. And the pairing was a natural because most of them were drug related ripoffs that turned into homicides, and so they wanted to use the DEA network of informants to try and gather some information on this. So I'm just a cub. They sent me along, but my job was to organize the files and pull the evidence together and catalog it. And I'm a 20-year-old kid still in college, having graduated, and I've got 100 and I think at the time 118 known murders that are unsolved, that are drug related. And I'm going, and they're going to pay me to do this? Who do I have to kill to keep the job? It's like,
well, that would make 119. Yeah. Let's not add to the number. Let's talk about the origin of your name though, because Placido, is it Placido or Placido?
Well, the Italian pronunciation is Placido. And that's my family hails from Abruzzo, sort of in the mountains just outside of Rome. Pig farmers that immigrated to the U.S. Yeah.
Buonasera, Commendatore.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but with that name, though, some people might mistake it for being of Spanish origin. And so, did you speak Spanish when you got down there at that time?
So, I actually speak good Spanish now after tours in Peru, Bolivia, a couple in Mexico, and traveled all over Latin America. I speak Italian well enough to get into trouble, but not enough to get out. My Spanish is much better than my Italian, actually. So.
Sounds like my English.
Well, that was it. So you're 20 years old and you're seeing all these homicides. But nothing deterred you. Nothing said, God, this is like, it's not quite like Miami Vice, but it's like, but every time you turn around, it's tough as a 20-year-old. You probably had never seen dead bodies before that, right?
No. And, I didn't get dragged out to too many of the actual crime scenes, but I was cataloging all of the photographs from the crime scenes that are out there. And this is back in the days of the Colombian necktie where they'd slit the throat and pull the tongue through, and it's almost like in that movie. Well, it was the movie Scarface was based on what was happening down there at the time, where guys that end up on Collins Avenue in some cheap motel, hung up in the shower stall and tortured to death, and we were picking up bodies out of canals, and it was gruesome stuff. But it was a real introduction into the brutality of the human species, but the brutality of the drug industry, right? And so when people would, you're a college kid, and drug use in universities is not something that's like unheard of. But when people talk about, how could you like enforce the drug laws and do all this stuff, and you're not seeing the other side of this. You're not seeing never mind the addiction and all the other problems, but these people are vicious. They're vicious criminal predators, and they need to be warehoused someplace to protect everybody else.
Good way to put it.
Who did we have on that was down there when the Muriel? Was that Jack Garcia? Who was there when the Muriel boat lift came through?
Alex Dominguez, I think he did a show
Alex Dominguez? Okay. Yeah, I think there's a couple folks that were there when the boat lift. And you want to talk about, you can kind of trace the increase in crime. You can see things spike. That thing comes over. The cartels, it was bloody back then, but man, this kind of added a whole new dimension. Now, is intel something you naturally gravitated to? Is that something they put you in and you just came to appreciate it? Because obviously, you end up running intelligence later. Did you have a knack for it? Or how did you end up getting in this job of being in intel and DEA so early on?
So as a student intern in this cooperative education program, they couldn't put a gun in my hand and turn me loose on the street. And the program was actually run by DEA's intelligence division. And so I was recruited for the intel program largely because I was doing a double major. So criminal justice and public administration. So, as it turned out, I talked to the guy who hired me years afterwards, and they were impressed that I knew something about public budgeting and policy analysis and those kinds of things to connect with the criminal justice side. And, they wanted me to stay and do the analytic work. I was never recruited to be a special agent. the work was fascinating. I was trained as an analyst. I had a mentor who came over from the CIA. This guy, rest in peace, George Oakey, really taught me a lot about sort of research and writing and not burying the lead in a story, but also not going beyond what the facts will say. So it was all it was really excuse me. It was fascinating to get this background in intelligence and to understand the big picture. But then as I went through the program and I'm ready to graduate, there's another guy, Abe Azam, who I worked for briefly there, and he was in charge of something called SEOSWA at the time, the Special Action Office for Southwest Asian Heroin. And he was, if you've never heard stories about this guy, he was the quintessential sort of tough guy DEA agent, and there was a lot of good-natured animosity between the gun toters, the agents, and the analysts, and some colorful language used in there. Anyway, I'm ready to graduate, and they had a couple of year hiatus where they couldn't hire special agents. I had been accepted to law school, put down a deposit at Temple University, on an apartment. I'm going off to law school. And I get a phone call, I'll never forget it, on a Friday afternoon from Abe Azam. And he says, "Hey, kid," says, "you want to be a puke lawyer or you want to be a real agent?" He says, "I got a vacancy. We need to fill it. I need somebody to go down to basic agent school in 4 weeks." He says, "What do you want to do?" "Sign me up," and that was basically how it all happened.
What kind of law were you going to study? And what if you were going to become a lawyer? What kind of lawyer did you want to become?
Criminal law. I always saw myself as a litigator, and it was probably a step towards getting into one of the federal agencies as an investigator anyway. And I'd gone that route mostly because even though I had this internship with the government, there was a big drawdown on hiring, and there was some question as to whether I was going to be able to stay with the government after I graduated from from college, and. And as it turns out, I didn't need to. I've got 3 brothers, and all 4 of us graduated from Northeastern on a Saturday, and we're employed full time in our field on Monday morning. So, sometimes things work out.
That makes mom and dad happy, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, if you're going to pay the bills, you better earn some money. My dad was a hard guy.
So as a Ute, as a 20-year-old, there, did they clear you, or were you cleared for top secret at that point, or did that come later?
No, I was. I started off, like everybody else, with sort of a confidential with a waiver, and then they worked on the security clearance while I was there. And by the time I was, my first tour in the federal government, 79. By 1980, I had a secret clearance. I don't think I got the top secret clearance until I graduated from university and was offered employment as a special agent. And then they, the upgrade from secret to top secret goes pretty quickly. But, it took the better part of 6-8 months for them to do the background investigation to give me the secret clearance. And
there is no such thing as efficiency in the federal government. Mindset. Have you ever heard of DOHA, the Department of Hearing and Appeals? Yeah. So I had a small issue. My small issue was they came to do my 5-year reinvestigation, and I had just come back from vacation. I mean, I was feeling good. Just come back we spent a week down in Cancun. I didn't mark that on my form because if you have a diplomatic passport, you don't have to mark any countries you go to as a dip passport, but in your regular stuff, you do. And they go, "Well, did you forget about this?" And I went, "Oh shit, yeah, I just came." That one little thing. I mean, it was on my passport. I just forgot to write it on the form. 6 months in Doha.
Yeah,
you are a very shady character,
dude. No, I used to be, not anymore. I'm reformed. Me and Michael Franzese, we're new guys. I got to tell you. So,
but there was actually quite a mafia in DEA from Northeastern, and it was and is a very good university for that. But really, it was a good program for the agency. If you look at how many of the people came through this program and went on to serve as executives in the agency. It's a very high level. I could rattle off 15 or 20 names of SESs that came through this program. And so it was so effective that, of course, the government had to kill it. So we have to.
Hey, it was working, so let's get rid of that.
Yeah, we need more inefficiency. People, please get rid of this program.
Yeah.
All right, well, but the thing I liked about the program, the way you said, is that it's a cooperative thing. I mean, Murph had the similar situation. It took him 5 years to get through third grade. So
You say that like it was a problem.
No, most people do it in 4, but you overachieve.
It was Tennessee. I was hanging right in there, brother. You got to get it right.
Yeah. But I like that too, because you get some real world experience. It's not like you go to a university for 4 years and you come out and you got zero idea what the real world's like. You got I mean, how many 20-year-olds are actually going out to crime scenes, homicide scenes, or working on 118 unsolved homicides and seeing what's going on? So what great experience. So what year did you join DEA? What was your official start date?
My official start date was July 2nd, 1980. It was July 3rd, 1979 with the federal government, with Customs. So, yeah, I ended up, when I retired at the end of 2010, with, I think it was 31, almost 32 years of government service, because I would do 6 months of work for the federal government. Then they would put me on leave without pay. I'd go back to school, but while I was on leave without pay, that counted towards my retirement. So I got 18 months of going to university that they're now crediting towards my retirement.
Only in the government does that work. Well, in 1980, I was a sophomore in college. Oh, wow. What fun. And Murph, you were guarding a railroad at that time, weren't you?
I was. And nobody ever stole a train under my watch.
Damn Skippy, man. Them trains are all still there. So you go through now. You seem like a square-away kid, but did you have any issues in the academy? I mean, did you have to write any memos? Were you any kind of a problem for the instructors?
Well, I don't know that I was so much of a problem.
Denial. That's not a denial.
My roommate was the first one to get bounced out of the academy. So we started with 36 and no, we lost 6. So we started with 42 and ended up with 36. But my roommate was the very first to go. And he was, if I have to say, he was somebody that shouldn't have been there in the first place. And we just sort of psychologically, he was not in a good place. He was a former NYPD officer, who was plain clothes, wasn't a detective, but he had an interesting personal life. The family and the kids on one side, and the girlfriend on the other, and there was a lot going on, and he just couldn't keep it all in balance. And then the demands and the stress that they deliberately placed us under, he cracked on a number of levels. Academically, he wasn't prepared, and he definitely wasn't prepared for the rigor of
and that's the point of the academy, right? Is the job's not made for everybody. We had my first roommate. They ended up putting him in a room by himself because he was kind of wacky and big man, extremely intelligent, in great shape. He could have done everything firearms. I think his dad was a chief of police in Florida. But and I went through Quantico at the FBI Academy when DEA was going through there, and this guy would line up, and we sat next to each other. He would line up photographs of his family and children, like on the 4 corners of his desk. We had those solid long desks, and he would just sit there and stare at them during class. And he would ace all the tests. I mean, he's extremely intelligent. It wasn't like he wasn't listening. But halfway through, he comes to us on a Saturday. He's like, "Hey guys, can y'all help me pack up?" Well, what do you mean pack up? Well, I'm going to call it quits. Hell no, we don't help. Sorry, we don't help quitters. You got to get that shit out of here on your own. But go ahead and go. And then we had another guy who was fantastic. He was a chemist by profession. So I'm not sure why he wanted to be an agent. But after about 3 weeks, we woke up one morning and he had just disappeared overnight. The man did not know that we carried weapons in DEA.
See, it's unforgivable. How do you get that far into a process? Do you remember George Ellen, Murph? So George Ellen looked like he was out of Central Casting for like tough guy cop, scar down one side of his face, and New Yorker, talk tough. So he was the he was in charge of the academic unit down at training, and we had these big paper placards with our names on the desk, like a nameplate. My roommate, was really having trouble, and so we knew something was going to happen. We come back from lunch. They take his nameplate. He's not there. They rip it in half. Of course, you could never be late. Push the desk together, and George Allen gets up and says, Mr. Marrero had neither the aptitude nor the attitude to be a DEA special agent. Looking around at this crowd, I see a bunch of people who are similarly situated. Your next speaker will be.
And that was it. We never saw him again. Everybody's bow, yeah.
His stuff was packed up and he was gone. There was no discussion. It was like we're not even going to mention his name again. The guy who used to be here and is no longer here is out.
It's kind of like Harry Potter, Voldemort, the name that shall not be spoken.
That's right.
Who's this guy? We don't say his name. But you yourself, you were just a stellar student, no issues in the academy, never had to write a memo like Murph.
Because my roommate was gone, a couple of times I was like not late, but if you weren't 5 minutes early, you were late in the academy.
Oh yeah.
Oh, and I took like some brutal treatment over that, with like the PT and all that kind of stuff. Right, we're doing a PT test, and I showed up like as we're getting ready to go, and oh no, so now you're going to run before we do the PT test,
and after we do it.
Yeah.
There was,
we had one where this is actually a funny story. So the guy he was a Border Patrol agent who was our PT instructor. So we're the very first DEA class to go through Glencoe, Georgia, and they want to make a showing of how tough DEA is compared to everybody else, right? So. We're doing raids. They've got this neighborhood of houses down there, and we're doing raids. And they've got these actors, a lot of whom are spouses of instructors and that sort of thing. So we do one, and we're playing it straight up, and we got some people who started getting mouthy and started, they wouldn't comply, and so they got treated like they would get treated in the real. And we didn't think anything of it. Of course, the whole thing's on video and everything. The next day, we're out for our morning jog with our PT instructor. He gets us in front of the house where this all went down, and he's got us running in place but not moving. And he says, some of you people did raid exercises in this house over here yesterday. There's a little blonde woman who was a role player in here. She got treated pretty harshly. That woman was my wife. I hope you boys are prepared to run, because we're not stopping until somebody starts vomiting. And true to his word.
Oh, my gosh.
Well, Murph has a story about actors and going. And just when you said that, you said actors. My first thought, Murph, was that story about Boyd Holbrook.
Yeah.
Does he know that one?
I don't know. Do you, Tony?
I don't think so. No.
So when, Michelle was still administrator and Narcos was ramping up, and they had already hired the actors. So they had Pedro Pascal was going to play Javier, and Boyd Holbrook was playing me. And Javier and I came with this idea. What if we were able to get the actors to come to the academy? So, contacted Michelle. She was all in favor of it. We got Netflix to pay for everything. Everybody, I was still living out in Loudoun County at the time. So Javier flew up. The two actors flew in. First time we ever met them. Picked them up to the airport on Sunday night, brought them over to the house, had dinner, got to know them a little bit. Monday, went to headquarters for a day. They got all the briefings and tours and all that stuff. And we were two gracious guys, man, stopping, taking pictures with everybody. And Tuesday, we embedded them at the DEA Academy for 4 days. And they had to do everything from PT to firearms to felony car stops. And so one of their things was to work undercover buying a couple ounces of meth in Hogan's Alley there. And they told them, they said, here's the scenario. You've already been here before. There's just another 2 ounce buy walk. You're going to buy it. You're going to walk away. Don't go in the house, though, because if you go in, we can't see you. You lose your protection. So Pedro goes up first, and he does an outstanding job. And, and the actor in there is trying to say, oh, come on, man, we don't want everybody seeing our business. Come on in the house. We make it private. And Pedro's like, no, man, we've done this before. Just here's the money. Give me the dope. I got to go. And so he starts to walk away, and the guy's like, okay, here you go. So he does everything right. Well, Boyd comes up. He knocks on the door. Guy says, hey, man, come on in. We don't want everybody to see your business. And Boyd goes, okay. So he goes in the house, and we're administratively in the background inside the house watching. And long story short, Mongo comes out of the back, unbeknownst to Boyd, and just this guy's like 6'8", got shoulders about 4 feet wide. He comes, "What the fuck are you doing in my house?" And just stands him up, pats him down, finds his undercover gun, just rakes him across the coals verbally. Then storms off in the back bedroom. Well, Boyd sits back down. He's being cool. He's like, "Man, what's this dude's problem? Everything's cool. We've done business before." And Mongo comes back out and kills him with his own undercover gun. Well, Boyd falls out on the floor. I thought he shit his pants. I thought, man, this guy's going to have a heart attack. He's never going to talk to us again. But so at the end of the week, the AV people created this poster that's still in the Eagle there at the DEA bar. And it's got the 4 of us on there, and we each, signed it and made a, never give up or whatever your saying was. And on Boyd's, he said, "Whatever you do, don't go in the house."
Yeah. Yeah, what's the line, right? Somebody's going to be in charge of this undercover operation, and it better be you, kid.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, man, it was. I love the guy. We've stayed in touch. We're still friends. In fact, we're going to get him on the podcast here, so just love him.
Well, yeah, we were down at the Southern California Gang Conference, and the guy who plays the Punisher was down there.
John Bernthal.
And Murph was telling him, tell him.
Yeah. Met John. He's like, what do you think about that guy who played you in Narcos? I said, "You mean Boyd Holbrook?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, "What do you think about him?" I said, "I like him, man. He's a friend of mine. We stayed in touch. I've helped him on a couple other projects, blah, blah, blah." I said, "Do you know him?" And he said, "Yeah, we were in a movie together." And I'm like, "Wow." And he said, "When's the last time you heard from him?" And I said, "Well, it's been several months. We're trying to get him on the podcast, but I know he's filming, and his wife's from Denmark, so they're always traveling to Europe, and then he's busy, And he's like, "F that." He said, "Come here." He said, "So we're going to take a selfie." He said, "Give him the finger." And I was like, "No, I'm not giving him the finger. I like the guy. He's a friend." So John's like, he said, "I will." And he gives him the finger, takes a picture, texts it to Boyd. Within a minute, Boyd's answered, and John told him, he said, "If Murph calls you to be on the podcast, you better get your ass on the podcast." And it was within a minute, Boyd's answered back, "Tell Murph I'm sorry. I'll be on the podcast soon. I apologize."
And whatever you do, don't go in the room.
Yeah. Famous last words.
But let's get back to you here, Tony. And now, is Tony short for Antonio?
Anthony, yeah.
Anthony.
But if I ever get called Anthony Peter, my middle name, I know I'm in some serious
trouble. And watch out, here comes the shoe. Well, let's get back to you. So after you get out, what's your first posting?
So they hired me out of Washington, D.C., and I came back just to sort of pack out there, and then I end up in Cleveland, Ohio. So
now, who did you piss off to go to Cleveland, Ohio?
Well, that's a good question.
Everybody was going to Miami at that point. I mean, come on.
So at the time, I'm engaged, and my now wife of 40 years is living in New York, and I volunteered to go to New York. So there was about half of my class that said, "Listen, I'll go anywhere in the world but New York," and I'm volunteering from New York. So they said, "Oh, this guy wants to go to New York. He obviously can't go there." So Cleveland, I had to get a map out. Where the hell is Cleveland? The mistake on the lake. I was shocked. Absolutely shocked. I learned 3 words that I will never, ever live in a place if the weatherman utters them again, and that's lake effect snow. Oh, my God.
Oh, man. Lake effect snow and lake effect wind. Those things will – well, you heard Cleveland – did you even know they had a professional football team?
Actually, I became a Browns fan when I was there. It was the first time that I could park my car at work and walk to the stadium, and I have been a long-suffering Browns fan ever since. And, long-suffering, it's redundant, right? If you're a Browns fan, of course you're long-suffering.
Well, you heard about the guy, true story, the guy that died, his last wish. He wanted 6 of the Cleveland Browns to be his pallbearers. He wanted to be let down one last time by the Browns. Thank you very much. Boom. My work here is done. Okay.
Until Thursday, try the Ville.
Yeah.
So that had to be initially that had to be culture shock for you, right? Because Cleveland is not like New York. You don't have all the buildings and the activity going on. It's Midwest. I'm a Kansas farm boy. You go out to the Midwest, things tend to be a little bit flatter, a little bit slower pace of life. So how was the culture shock for you when you went out to Cleveland?
Yeah, as a kid from the Northeast, I went to university in Boston, spent a lot of time up in New York. I go to Cleveland, it's like they roll up the streets and put them away at night. You could shoot a cannon downtown after hours with no risk of hurting anybody.
Did you ever hear that John Denver song? It was called
No.
"You Ask How I Know of Toledo, Ohio." Well, I spent a week there one day. They've gotten basically they roll back the sidewalks precisely at 10, and people who live there are not seen again. I mean, he had it perfectly down. Yeah.
I don't know the song, but that's definitely the sentiment. Yeah, no, it was interesting. Did 4 years there, and it turned out to be okay. Was not really what I was looking for, and I ended up being the seventh man in a 7-man office, arrayed against an FBI division of about 140, and
Wow.
that's at the time when we were still fighting out whether FBI was going to be very active in the counter drug business, and so there were interesting times, and I was the new blood, so I ended up doing a lot of undercover work in my first 2 or 3 years there.
Did you ever play a mobster with with a name like Placido? If your name ends in a vowel, you got to be a mobster.
I did, in fact, and ended up in a bunch of conflicts with the FBI over that, because one of my big cases to get promoted on was a case where we ended up taking down one of their informants. As
Okay, we got to hear that. Yeah.
How would you know he was an FBI informant? Because they never tell you.
No, they sure didn't. No, so I'm working undercover, and I've got the whole Italian, sort of mafia wannabe persona going, and I'm buying heroin.
What's your undercover name?
Tony Pantangeli. So it's Tony Placido, right? It's like a throwback right to the, to the Godfather, but
wow.
Tony Pantangeli. Okay.
Yeah.
I can't even spell
Tony
that.
G. Tony P. Hey, Tony P. What's going on, man?
Well, that was it. I'm a Tony P normally, right? So, but anyway, I'm buying dope from these guys who are, made Italian guys. So it's Angelo Leonardo and Billy Borgelli and Nick Martello and all these guys who the FBI had been investigating and hadn't actually, they were associated with some of their people.
Would they belong to any specific family, or just made guys in general?
No, these guys were all they were associated with a crew out of New Jersey, right? It was I'm trying to remember the name of the organized crime group that was down there. It'll come to me in a second, but the long and the short of it is, end up doing one, and we follow the guy who's going to pick up the dope into this house of a guy named Clarence Greathouse. And so I'm buying heroin, but we end up doing a search warrant over there, and I think it's 5 kilos of coke and several 100,000 dosage units of pills and a bunch of marijuana, a couple $100,000 in cash, which in the Midwest was a big case, right? I mean, this wasn't, it's not Miami later on where you have to rent a truck to take away the evidence, or it's not a big seizure. And anyways, it turns out Clarence Greathouse was an FBI informant. And I find this out after we had arrested him and, done the initial appearance. Somebody says, you better get over and talk to the AUSA over there, because the FBI and the AUSA are talking plea agreement with my defendant without me there. Well,
Ooh.
That's the point where my career could have ended prematurely, because I was furious. And it turned out
Italians have a temper. Who would have known?
As it turns out, the AUSA and I became good friends after that. He didn't understand what he'd gotten himself into. I think there was some.
Did the FBI not tell him that? How could you not? He's obviously been indicted, right? Arrested on a DEA case, right?
Yeah, the FBI case agent that was running this guy as an informant, made representations that we had worked this all out at the interagency level before he talked to the AUSA, which just was not true. He may have aspired for that to have happened, but we had never had a conversation about it.
Hope is not a strategy. So what did this Greathouse, right, the informant, what did you actually end up charging him? I mean, if you remember, I know it's been a while back, but it wasn't charged. He wasn't charged with like jaywalking. This guy is involved in a conspiracy and delivering dope, right?
Yeah, no, it was the IRS was involved as well when we ended up doing this thing, and he ended up eating I think it was a 20-year sentence. So it was, 5 kilos of coke, a couple $100,000 in cash, a couple 100,000 dosage units of pills, but records. What we really got were 3 or 4 ledger books that then we built a historical conspiracy on that showed that this guy had been dealing significant quantities of dope for years while he was, actively working for the FBI and basically feeding them his competition.
I hate to say this, but did you think they knew it and just turned a blind eye to it because they were getting what they needed out of other cases?
They certainly did not aggressively investigate this guy. He threw him a couple of scraps. He kept him busy enough. Now, whether they had reason to know and turned a blind eye, or they just were, didn't have enough innate suspicion. How does this guy know all these things? It wouldn't. Let's put it this way: after a 30-year career in this business, if you didn't think that there was something wrong with this guy, you didn't belong
in
our profession.
Was he maybe providing information on organized crime or?
Well, there was some of that, right? That's absolutely the case. And maybe their calculus was, in the grand scheme of things, let's not kill the goose that's laying the golden eggs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but if he's just giving them chicken scratch, chicken feed, just feeding them enough to keep, what he was doing, he was feeding them just enough to keep the FBI off of his ass so he could keep dealing his dope.
Well, taking out his competition.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know enough about what he was doing. They never did, really go into a big rendition with me about what he did for them apart from this. But what we ended up proving in our case with the historical conspiracy was this guy was a major level drug dealer in the Midwest. I mean, this was not somebody who we happened to catch him on a bad day.
Which would have violated his UC agreement with the FBI, because part of the agreement, right, is you won't commit crimes while you're,
Yeah. Well, I liked your choice of word there, Tony. Rendition.
That has some ominous tones to it. We're going to rendition.
It does.
I've been involved in those too. That's fun.
Well,
is that classified? Is that something we can talk about? Those are kind of exciting.
Actually, it is. Yeah. So in Florida, we're doing a case on a guy. Jay Gregorius is working in my group, and the guy who we were working the case on had already been indicted, but we needed to get him back, and he was down in Venezuela.
Hey, Tony, before we get too far into this, a lot of people, we know what it means, but just real quickly tell people when you rendition somebody, when you do rendition, what does that mean? So people understand.
Yeah. So extradition is a legal construct. So when you want to bring somebody from one jurisdiction to another to face trial, you go before the courts and the court orders the person removed. A rendition typically is one where it's extrajudicial. You don't necessarily have the courts involved. And what they've said over the years is, as long as the means by which you render the person and get them to the jurisdiction where they're wanted doesn't shock the conscience of the court, that the U.S. has got no business.
There have been some times, I know a couple cases we had, but the Mexican authorities, for the right amount of money, but they just tossed the guy across the border, brought him to a port of entry, and tossed him across the border. Say, not a problem anymore. And they said, "U.S.
Now that's a Mexican extradition
on the wrong side of the line, someplace."
That's called a Mexican extradition. That's a little bit different.
Nothing wrong. That's like an Alabama search warrant. We'll talk about. Okay, now that we know, so basically, extradition is judicial proceedings. Rendition is extrajudicial. It's like it doesn't always have to go through the court, as long as it doesn't shock the conscience, which is good now, because after all the shit we've seen, not much shocks the court anymore. So, now, you're talking about, so pick it up from there. You're down in Peru.
No, we're in Venezuela. So
I'm just checking your story, just making sure you were.
We fly into Caracas to meet with this guy, and he's an air smuggler. He's flying loads out of South America into the sugarcane fields near West Palm Beach. And he'd already been indicted, so we had the case made against him, but now we got to get the body to get him arrested. And so we set up a deal to go down and negotiate another deal with him, but he wouldn't come to the States to do it. He's going to send other pilots to fly this stuff up. So we go down and meet with him at a hotel in Caracas, and sitting there over drinks in a nice hotel and having a discussion about him flying another load for us. And he gets up to leave from the restaurant to get into a cab. And what he doesn't know is that we're working with the PTJ down there, the Policía Técnico Judicial. And they pick him up as the cab ride. And this guy disappears. And the next time we see him is about 2 hours later. We're on the DEA plane down there. And the guy shows up a little worse for wear, right? And I remember he's got duct tape over his eyes, through his hair. And they basically like threw him to us and said, you could have him. I said, what? He said, yeah. I said, do we need to do any no, just take him. And so we flew him out, but because it's a strange thing, right? So he was already indicted, so there should have been no reason not to just fly him back to the Southern District of Florida where he'd been indicted. But the AUSA got some kind of a weird, order and said, hey, listen, no, in this case, we're going to take him to the nearest available magistrate, which happens to be in San Juan, Puerto Rico. So we fly into San Juan, and there's a judge there named Justo Arenas, who's the magistrate. And this guy's another one of these. He's a character study all on himself. And now they want to have another hearing down in Puerto Rico before we can detain this guy. I'd never heard of such a thing. I said, excuse me, we have an indictment against this guy. He's already indicted in the Southern District. He says, yeah, but you don't understand, son. He says that we don't have any detention facilities on the island of Puerto Rico at this time that are certified to hold federal prisoners. And what facilities we do have, this Oso Blanco is the name of the prison where they're going to put this guy, are so dangerous that we won't put federal prisoners in there unless I'm satisfied as the magistrate judge that this guy is really a bad actor. So we had to have a hearing to get this guy detained overnight so we could have his initial appearance and then fly him back to. So then I start hearing these stories like, yeah, people go into Oso Blanco, but they don't always come out. They
like Hotel California.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and the next morning it took us 3 hours for them to find the guy so they could give him back to us so we could fly him out. It's like,
was he hiding or was he just squirreled away in some cell?
The prisoners are in charge, and the guards are just sort of, they're an afterthought over there, and you kind of negotiate for them to find him and turn him over.
Oh my gosh!
It was crazy. And it looked like one of these, old Dracula castles, the place that we went to. So but as it turns out, the guys down there love this judge. This Justo Arenas turned out to, I think, eventually become a federal judge, not just a magistrate. And he was an interesting guy, but yeah. Anyway, there was no judicial order to take him. It was like, the PTJ threw him to us and said, take him, get him, go where you want to go. A flurry of phone calls later.
Did that create any issues for your case later?
No, actually, we brought them back up and they said, you guys went through the process, you consulted with the lawyers, you took the extraordinary step, and that's where it turned out of getting to the nearest available magistrate before you even brought them back to Florida. You've done all you could do. You didn't. They never raised the issue, and we certainly did not align ourselves with the PTJ to whatever kind of interrogation he may have gotten before they give him back over to us. Their country, their rules. They just, when they were done with them, they dropped them off to us and said, here, take them, go. We don't want them.
I have never taken a prisoner from anybody that had duct tape around their eyes and through their hair.
I have not either. That's a first.
Well, when we finally got him on the plane and he realized we were taking him back, and he was actually thrilled. He was thrilled.
Get me out of here.
I'll tell you anything. Just don't send me back to Oso Blanco.
Yeah.
Well, they would have taken him to the outside of the plane.
That was even before Oso Blanco, yeah.
They would have duct taped him to the outside of the plane and transported him.
Yeah. he's out there. He might need a little oxygen. We'll see. Well, that's interesting because when we talked too, there was a couple cases we wanted to talk about too. So one was before you went to Miami, because Miami, that's going to be a good one. Let's talk about the one because you were mentioning some of the companies. So countries that you served in. So let's talk about this case. And this one I said Peru before, but where it was Venezuela, right? It's where.
No. The other case we were talking about is actually in Peru. I was actually assigned to Peru. Venezuela, I was already in Miami. We went down to Venezuela to do an undercover deal. But I was assigned to Peru from 1987 to 1990, about 3.5 years, in order to escape Cleveland and get back to to someplace a little more exciting. I ended up volunteering to go to Peru, and
how did that go with the wife?
So my wife went down pregnant, and she came back to have the baby and our first. And Megan and my wife came back when my daughter was 6 weeks old. So it was interesting. The good news is that we had this big house that the government provided, and we could afford live-in help. And so somebody else was cleaning dirty diapers and cleaning the house, and she could spend all the time with the baby. The bad news was, the family and the support system was a long way away. But
what was the reason for going back to have the baby? Was it medical care, just issues of citizenship or concerns? What was the concern?
So my wife had originally planned on having the baby in Peru, and she'd found a doctor who'd been trained in the U.S. and was very competent. She really liked him. But when we finally got down to see the hospital, the level of nursing care and technology, and it said basically, if something goes wrong, the ability to deal with it down here may not be as well. And then Cheryl Green was the nurse practitioner down there at the time. She said, "Hey, listen, we recommend that you go back. And not only that, we'll pay for you to go back and have the baby." So my in-laws were living up in Vermont, running a country store up in Stowe, Vermont at the time. And my oldest daughter is a Vermont woodchuck now. So she's born in Vermont.
Hey players, that is the end of part 1. Part 2 comes out, as always, on Tuesday. In the meantime, go check us out at Game of Crimes on Twitter, at Game of Crimes Podcast on Facebook and the Instagram. Also, go check out our website, gameofcrimespodcast.com. We've got a lot more information there, including our book list. Any book written by our guests will be listed there. In the meantime, go check us out also, patreon.com/Game of Crimes. It's where we put a lot more content you won't hear on our regular podcast. We go into a lot more topics, and folks, it is a lot of fun. So go check us out, patreon.com/Game of Crimes. In the meantime, everybody stay safe. We'll see you tomorrow for part 2.